Nick here from Trainer Plus. This video is the third video in our series on how to innovate your fitness business. So previously we looked at what's just happening in the market for gyms and trainers given the pandemic and the different economics and how that's making changes to the business model with the decrease in revenues that people are facing from decreased membership, decreased personal training sessions, looking at how to make up those revenues. In the last video, starting to look at different online services that can be part of this, we're looking at the markets for different things. Last time we looked at online content and streamed classes, so the more passive side, the more self-directed side of the services that you can offer. And in this video, we're going to use the same framework we used to look at the virtual training as a service as well as programming and oversight. So if you missed it, check out that last video because we talk about the framework we use, which is the supply and demand graph to show what's happening in the market, as well as the customer conversion funnel to show how that market looks and how you can sell and how many people you can get to buy it. The next online service we're going to look at is virtual training. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about doing training sessions, one-on-one sessions or one-to-group sessions done through video calls. As we've seen, most trainers and gyms have shifted to do this out of necessity, whether it was because their gym was closed or they just have people who aren't as willing to come back into the gym. So we have seen a big shift in this happening. The opportunity for it is that you can do it with the gym closed and you can reach those people who don't want to come in to the gym or aren't comfortable doing in-person sessions. It also means there's no travel, so it's a lot easier to do and trainers can kind of do this from anywhere. The challenges to this are many. Looking at number one on the customer side, they've got limited equipment to be able to do it with compared to them coming into the gym and having access to all of that equipment. It's a lot harder to correct technique through video than it is in person. So people might not see the same value as doing the video session as they would an in-person session or get the same results, which is also a big part of what drives PT sales in general. So it can be harder to sell even to existing training clients if they don't see the value in just doing that session online as opposed to coming in and doing it in person. The biggest challenge here is the same one we run into with personal training, and that's cost. So just looking at the economics of it in general, looking at the cost per session times a couple sessions per week times how many weeks in a month. The cost is just prohibitively too expensive, the same way that it is for training. The number one objection people have to buying training usually is that it's a cost thing, it's affordability. And doing it virtually, you run into the same challenges, whether it's converting your member base into this or looking at new customers especially. What we're seeing is the amount of clients in gyms and for trainers has been decreasing. People have been pausing and canceling sessions as it is. And we're also seeing a lot of gyms who are talking about they're losing trainers. And that's for a number of reasons. If trainers have had to develop the business online while gyms were closed, then they've left and they're doing that on their own. If they're not having as big an access to the client pool, the potential client pool, because there's less people coming into the gym, then it makes it harder for them to be a trainer in general, and it might be easier for them to build that business on their own. So those are some real challenges that everyone's kind of facing when it just comes to training. Looking at the competition for this service, again, it's pretty much everybody. Most gyms and trainers have moved to doing some virtual training or all virtual training as part of their service mix. So you're competing with them especially when you're looking at new customers. So let's look at the market for this. Pre-pandemic, this was actually a relatively unsaturated market. There was a small number of trainers and gyms who were doing online and virtual training, and it was really for a pretty specific client type. And whether that was somebody who traveled a lot, somebody who had a high need for it because of their goals or whatever it was in that sense, or somebody who already had that relationship with the trainer or gym and just wanted to go virtual and moved away from the area. There was a number of reasons, but this was a pretty small market relatively and unsaturated. Now, what we've seen for this, obviously the demand for virtual training has grown because more people are at home, more people are working out that way, so there are more potential clients when we look at this market. But it also doesn't work for everybody who was doing in-person training previously. Again, they might not see the same value in it. Some of those people are waiting until they feel comfortable going back in the gym and starting training again. So there has been an increased demand, but it hasn't been significant for virtual training on its own. The supply on the other side of this has increased dramatically. Again, with everybody converting into this, we've seen a huge supply increase into the market, which means that curve has shifted to the right dramatically. What that's done is that's pushed the price for training down and increased the quantity. The second part of that's pretty obvious. There's a lot more of this happening now in the market, and especially at a relatively lower price point. But again, that price point's been pushed down for a number of reasons. One, people don't see the same value if they're not going in and seeing that in the gym and having access to that full equipment. Then they're not seeing that. The other reason is a lot of trainers have moved into this market on their own, and they charge less per session because they don't have to do the revenue split with the gym. And so they're charging less, which means the market in general has a lower price per session for virtual training than it does for one-on-one in-person training. Now, those challenges go even more so when you're looking at, new clients in themselves, because if they don't know your trainer, know your gym, have that relationship already, they're going to make that decision a lot more based off of value and price as it goes. Looking at the funnel for this, the potential market really is, again, everybody who's in your social network, your email list, all those members and existing clients. There might be even a sub-market of this, which is your existing training clients who might convert into this type of training. Now, going down to the next layer, not everybody is going to be interested in training or virtual training necessarily, whether that's because they work out on their own, they've got their own habits, they've got their own content, their own workout program, so they don't want to work with a trainer. They might not just be interested in training in general. Looking at that next layer of how many people actually have the desire to do it, again, you're going to have that same reason whether people are doing things on their own and they don't really want to work with a trainer, or it's just going into the cost of it. Again, the challenge with cost. So you're going to have a much smaller number of people that actually convert to paid on virtual training. And that's why you see this funnel being very narrow and very steep as it goes down from your potential market, everyone you can reach, to people that will actually convert to paid on the other end of it. If we look at pre-pandemic, you only had about 2.4% of the population that worked with a trainer. And the average in a gym was about 4 or 5% of gym members that actually worked with a personal trainer. So even with more access to virtual training and that lower price point, those are the realistic economics of it. And now you've got people with less disposable income, with all of everything else going on, and more uncertainty economically, which means there might be even less people that can afford, regular training and paying for that. So, potentially that's a smaller market with a bit of a harder sell for the service itself. So the conclusion about this with virtual training, again, this is what has to be part of the mix, but it's not going to lead to significant new revenue on its own. It's great for retaining your training clients, especially those who aren't coming back to the gym, or if your gym is closed, so you can retain them through it and keep some revenues flowing that way. But it's much harder to stand out in this saturated market to new customers, and it's super competitive to sell outside of your existing network if they don't already know your brand, know your trainers, and know what you do. Now they're looking at you versus everybody else and the pricing out there for everybody else. Again, the biggest challenge with this is cost, and with less income, it's going to make it harder to sell and scale. You can still use this though to complement other services and as kind of like your top item in your online service mix. Especially if you're thinking about adding sessions to other things like your classes, like programming, which we're just about to talk about. Or what we found a lot through this is just adding some trainer time, whether that's consultations or regular check-ins and conversations with people, not necessarily the training session itself, but that 30-minute weekly check-in to talk about the program, to talk about what's going on, ask questions, and have that interaction with a trainer. So there are other ways you can either spin this as part of your service mix in general. The last online service that we're going to look at is workout programming and oversight. So what we mean by that is basically giving a program to somebody that they can track, and you can provide oversight on that program and ongoing changes from the trainer themselves. Now, the opportunity here is that really it's not offered currently by a lot of people. And at the end of the day, everybody really needs a workout program. No matter their goals and no matter their level of experience, everybody needs a program to follow as they go. it's kind of this really works as an in-between, classes, which are a little bit more passive and self-guided in that sense, and classes and content, and regular personal training. This can be sold in a variety of ways. You can look at doing low cost, where you can grab programs from a library, give it to people, have it be on their own, adding the oversight from a trainer to it, or adding some more in-person time to a trainer. So there's a range of ways that you can actually sell this service or have different versions of this service at different price points, from lower cost to sort of medium cost, all the way up to adding this as a complement to regular training. We have lots of more content on that. If you want to see more content on the range of services you can offer in this sense, check out our YouTube, and even check out the podcast we did at the start of the pandemic, where I talk a lot more about this as it is. The other thing with programming is you can take a more long-term approach when you're talking about the sale of the client or the support of the client. Because usually you're not just going to give them a program for 1 month. You're going to look at a goal and talk to you about programming different phases all the way to the goal. And so again, there's more content about how to take that approach if you look at our channels. But it just means the conversation now is that, and we even recommend to people that if they're selling a service like that, they look at selling a 3-month minimum or something like that, that allows you to have that ongoing, more long-term approach. This can really also be used, as we said, as a complement to classes and things like challenge that you run, and also looking at other markets, like healthcare, corporate wellness, that you're going to look at reaching out to as more of a starter service than just jumping right into training or even membership. The challenges that you can run into with this service, number one, people really feel like it can devalue regular training session, and that's that's really tough, because at the end of the day, if people need more time from a trainer, they're going to see and pay for that. If anything, this gives an ability to get people in and see the value from a trainer, and maybe then want more of that as well. So as much as the feeling is it can devalue that regular training that you're used to selling, realistically it can attract a much larger market and add value to people knowing they need more time with a trainer at the end of the day. The other challenge is that there really is a lot of info out there. There's a lot of workout programs out there. But most people really need accountability and applied knowledge, that value we talk about scaling in Trainer Plus. They need the accountability to be someone else holding them accountable to doing their plan all the time. But more importantly, they need somebody to tell them what they need to do and how they need to adapt that plan over time based off of the results and continuing to move to a goal. So they're not going to get that just grabbing some program from somewhere, or if they're just following stuff on YouTube. The other challenge with this really is that it can be very difficult to deliver value for a service like programming. You really need a tool like Trainer Plus or something similar. At the end of the day, the customer themselves have to see the value in it, and just getting a spreadsheet or something on paper that they track, they don't see as much value as when they've got it on their phone in an app, and the workouts they're tracking, they know what trainer's seeing and making ongoing changes to, and also being able to provide that accountability for them and have that follow-up and that ongoing dialogue. So you really need a tool to be able to deliver the value that people will pay for this and continue to pay for this. So looking at the market for this service, this is a very underserved market, which means that there is an excess demand for this, because many more people want this service than it's being provided in the market right now. If we look at the graph itself, on the lower left on the supply curve, you see where sort of P start and Q start meet, which is below where that equilibrium point is. That's because most people want a program and they don't really know how to do it on their own, but personal training is too expensive. It's not really offered as a paid service by many people. In fact, a lot of people will offer this even as a free, here's a program to kind of get started, which means the quantity in the market right now is lower than it should be. The price that people charge for this, they either charge a really high price because it's a specialization, whether it's bodybuilding coaching or other things like that, or they're a trainer who's developed enough of a market for it and enough of a reputation that they can charge a high price for something like this, or they're giving it away for free and it's lower than it should be, especially if it's just with spreadsheets or PDFs or something like that. So both the price and the quantity are lower right now in the market than they should be. The gap between what is offered today and where the realistic demand is where there's a huge opportunity. There's a bunch of excess demand, especially with the pandemic. Now more people are working out from home and they don't know what to do and they need a program to follow. So there's a huge opportunity here in access demand as well. What that can also mean is there's an opportunity to charge a pretty reasonable price for this, especially if you're delivering a lot of value like we talked about, the accountability, the applied knowledge, with using a tool like Trainer Plus or something equivalent. So there is a lot of perceived value. If people are tracking it every day and they're getting that interaction, they feel like they're working with a trainer on a regular basis, but it's at a lower price point than regular training and a much higher price point than you charge for something like group classes or something like that. So it's that service you can sell at a medium price point, and you can really have a range of prices depending on how much trainer time is spent with one-on-one, and you can have different services that are geared around that, different programming and oversight services geared around that. And again, it works as a complement for classes and sessions. Looking at the customer conversion funnel for this, again, you've got the same basic addressable market that we've talked about in the other examples. So starting with your social channels, your email list, all of your members or your clients that you have for this, or former clients. That's where you have your initial potential market for this service. Now, if you look at the next layer down, that the layer of interest, anybody who needs a program would be interested in this type of service. And as we said, everybody pretty much needs a program, regardless of where they are on that scale, on that spectrum, or whether they're a beginner or an expert. Everyone needs a program and probably has some interest in following something as they go. The next layer down would be the desire for it. And if you're offering this as part of the range of services and offer something like a free consult, I think a lot of people are going to desire to at least talk to you and see what they could get out of it. So again, that's a wider amount of people that will have a desire to at least get that free consult and talk to you about it. And that means you can probably convert a lot more people into the purchase and into that, especially depending if you've got different price points or a range of services that can meet them no matter their schedule and their budget and what access to equipment they've got. You should have a higher conversion rate on purchase. Not only that, you've got a better long-term revenue potential with this. The reason being is because if you're taking that long-term approach, they should adopt this and you should be able to retain them in the long term. And not only that, you can also look at selling them more services in the long run. If just a program's not enough, they might need some more trainer time. And so there's a lot more potential in the sort of retention and growth beyond just the purchase for this, which allows your revenue potential to grow beyond other services. So the conclusion about this, really there's a lot of potential right now for this type of service. It's a very underserved market, but it's something that people have a lot of demand for. This also acts as a great complement to other services. It's more than just classes. It's more involved in classes, it's more individualized and customized that people have. But it's also less than regular personal training, both in terms of the involvement, the time commitment, and the cost. It really, if you're doing this right, it can change your value proposition having this with the mix of things from if you can sell them some training, more into how you're going to help them given the range of services that you've got. You can sell this to your existing customers, so those that might just be your members and might not be training clients. You can look at selling them this service, especially if they're a little bit more price sensitive. But this also allows you to reach out to new markets and talk about if people want to get a program from you, even if they don't come into your gym. They don't have to be a member, they don't have to come into your gym, but they can still get the program from you no matter where they work out. So a more potential to reach out to that new market. This is a great way as well to retain those personal training clients. So that person that's done the sessions and they're not going to renew, especially again if they're price sensitive, this is another service that they can move to instead of just losing them as a training client in general. The other thing you can look at doing is as an alternative to membership. So those people that aren't going to come into the gym and they're freezing their membership or they're looking at canceling it, being able to offer them a program that they can do at home working with a trainer for a similar cost point to the gym membership itself is another way of retaining those people. So all in all, we think this is a service that more people should be offering. It has a ton of potential. It complements everything really well. And we think that this is something that really you need to be doing right now, where there's a ton of revenue potential for this to grow that existing lack or that missing revenues that you have from memberships and PT having fallen off. Those were the markets for virtual training and programming and oversight. So more on the training side of things and working with the trainer in some capacity. Again, there's challenges to both of these in terms of scaling them on their own, but they really work well to complement each other. On the virtual training side, there's the challenge just in general in selling sessions in general and the value of virtual versus in person. On the programming side, it works really great and can work on its own because it is an underserved market, but it also works in complement to be able to add sessions to it, and you kind of need the training sessions as a complement to it to really make it really valuable. In the next video, we're going to go through how you put these services along with the online content and streaming classes that we talked about in the previous video together into a range of services that work for a complete product offering for you to not only drive new revenues that you need from your existing customer base, but also reach out to new customers and also new markets. We're going to talk about how you can take an innovative approach to this, a lean approach to figure out what service mix is the best for you and what prices, and how you figure out how to get there by taking the right approach and innovating towards that and iterating towards that. After that, we're going to actually talk about some of the things mentioned in these videos, like putting together challenges with this service mix and then reaching out to new markets like corporate wellness and healthcare, and how these different services can work so that you can grow new revenues and get new customers from there. See you next time.